All right, guys, in today's video, we're touching on the topic of self-defense, but in the context of domestic violence cases. Now, this issue doesn't come up too often, but I think it happens enough to where it's worth actually, shooting some content on this, because if you follow this channel, you might just be interested in the law in general, but we also get content out for people who are actually facing charges, have been arrested, or are under investigation, and they're looking for answers just to find some peace of mind before pulling the trigger and reaching out to a criminal defense attorney. So doing that research stage, and you might want to know if you might be able to use self-defense in the context of your domestic violence case. And so it's not that straightforward and black and white. And the reason is because, let's just say 8 to 9 times out of 10, the guy is the one that gets arrested, right? Versus the female. Without getting into the reasons behind that, but let's just take that as a fact. There would be some hesitancy for a guy to try and claim that they acted in self-defense against their female, against their girlfriend or their wife, right? And a lot of that will end up having to do with, stereotypes and gender biases and all of that. And I think that's why this is, really an important topic to touch on, because the laws regarding self-defense absolutely apply to domestic violence situations as well. And so, let's kind of walk through an example story. So many of these situations start over a cell phone, right? So, guy scrolling through his cell phone, there's just too many underdressed women in his IG feed. That sets the girl off. She wants to see his phone, already suspecting that he's talking to other girls on Instagram, and that leads to an argument, which, things start to get physical. Girlfriend wants to actually grab the phone. The guy is holding on to the phone. He doesn't want to give up his phone. Girlfriend's getting frustrated, and ends up slapping the guy or even punching him. And now the guy's in a situation, man, what am I supposed to do? And if he's a gentleman, obviously he's not looking to, slap or punch her, right? But he also is not trying to get beat up and get violated himself. So he may respond with some force, but let's just say, all he wants to do is get her away. He ends up pushing her, right? And she falls on her tailbone and hurts herself, right? And maybe even bumps her head on the coffee table, right? And now there's a little gash there. And, as happens pretty often, some neighbors over here, they call 911, and now we have police responding to the scene, right? The guy has, some redness to his face from getting slapped. But the girlfriend, she has now visible injuries, right? So, they start to take pictures and everything, and they see, okay, now she has some redness to her tailbone area where she said she fell, and she has this, slight gash to the side of her head from hitting her head on the coffee table. And the guy decides he's not going to give any statements. He has been following my channel and knows that you don't give statements to the police, certainly without speaking to a defense attorney first, right? So he doesn't give any statement. She says what happens, not wanting to take any responsibility, because a lot of people don't understand exactly what's going to happen, right? So she may say, yeah, she conveniently leaves out that she slapped and hit him, but mention, we got into an argument and then he pushed me and, I fell on my tailbone and, man, my backside hurts. And now I have this, she might be bleeding a little bit, and they're taking pictures and asking more questions. And now the decision's been made because of her visible injuries and the like, that they're going to arrest the guy. And she may not even have wanted this to happen. She's just, thinking, I'm just explaining what's happening. And at the end of the day, I don't want him to be prosecuted. I don't want him to be arrested. We didn't even call you, right? And so then it turns into the guy getting arrested, and now he's actually facing felony domestic violence charges. And, again, this can be extremely frustrating. I mean, if you're not dealing with the self-defense scenario, I mean, facts like this happen all the time. But in terms of the self-defense element of it, the question would be, does this guy have a shot at raising a self-defense position, right? And I would say that he did, because, essentially, in order to use self-defense, you have to be able to argue that you were in imminent danger of bodily harm, right? And so he was in imminent danger of bodily harm. I mean, she had already started slapping and punching him, right? And so perhaps even before that contact initiated, he might have had grounds to act in self-defense, push her away, use light force. At the end of the day, the force used has to be reasonable given the circumstances. You have to believe that you using force is going to be necessary in order to do away with the threat of harm. And then there's a reasonableness element to it, right? So he pushed her. It just was by happenstance or chance that she unfortunately slipped and hit her head on that coffee table. But that wasn't his intention. He's just trying to get her off, and that ended up happening. So in that situation, especially in a situation where she didn't actually call 911, it was a neighbor that called 911, we definitely would want to get a statement from her where she can actually lay out and clarify what ended up happening. And that's going to be very useful to help clear the guy's name. But even if she weren't necessarily on board, at the end of the day, that's the defense that we would be leaning on, that, hey, but for her ratcheting the aggression up from, mere words, argument, yelling, or what have you, to the physical confrontation, it was her actions that placed him in that fear of imminent bodily harm. And he acted with the force just enough necessary to do away with the threat. Now, the unfortunate, subsequent injury that came from her, slipping and hitting her head, that, while unfortunate, was certainly not, part of his intention. His intention was to defend himself. And so in that situation, if you have a self-defense position, then that's an outright defense to really any violent charge, whether that's murder, is going to be at the top of the list, murder on down to, a simple battery and all stops in between. If you're acting in self-defense, then that's going to be an outright defense of the charge. So you may not have known that you could use self-defense in a domestic violence situation, but if you didn't know, now you know. If you have questions, leave me questions in the comments below. If you have suggestions for future video ideas, I am more than willing to consider them. If I think they'll be useful for the crowd, then I'll definitely shoot them. I want to thank you, as always, for supporting the channel. And until next time, be blessed, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.